Hello, everyone. After years of silence, at the age of 49, Kate Winslet has finally opened up about a very special memory from her Titanic journey. This isn't about scandals or gossip, but about 5 names, 5 colleagues who left unforgettable marks on her heart. Together, they created a masterpiece that became part of cinema history. Yet, behind the camera, their relationships weren't always as sweet as they appeared. In this video, I'll share Kate's heartfelt confessions, reflections filled with both regret and tenderness, giving us a deeper glimpse into the soul of an artist. Leonardo DiCaprio, the name that once made Kate Winslet the most uneasy on Titanic. What's important is that Kate has never questioned their bond. She cried when he won his long-awaited Oscar. He held her hand during some of her darkest times. Their friendship is real and deep. Yet even in the strongest friendships, small bruises remain. And at 49, with time and maturity, Kate finally felt calm enough to admit the truth. Leonardo DiCaprio, with all his brilliance and allure, was also the one who made her feel the most uneasy. Not because he was unkind, not because he lacked talent, but because sometimes perfection itself can become a heavy shadow, one that a young actress had to fight through just to find her own light. It wasn't resentment, nor jealousy. It was simply the honest reflection of someone who had to carve her identity while standing beside a man the whole world adored. For audiences, Leonardo DiCaprio will always be the symbol of timeless charm. But for Kate Winslet, he is also a reminder. Behind every dazzling star, there are shadows that others must learn to live with. And in speaking up now, she isn't diminishing Leo. She's revealing the deeply human truth that behind the applause and the spotlight, there are real emotions, struggles, and scars that anyone who's ever stood next to a superstar will understand. For millions of moviegoers, Leonardo DiCaprio will forever be Jack Dawson, the fearless young man who, alongside Rose, created one of the greatest love stories ever told aboard the Titanic. His sparkling eyes, mischievous smile, and youthful charm melted hearts across the world. But for Kate Winslet, looking back on those days on set, Leonardo's name carries a far more complicated weight, admiration mixed with discomfort. Kate has never denied Leo's extraordinary talent. From their very first auditions, she knew she was standing next to someone destined to conquer Hollywood. He was quick, charismatic, effortlessly commanding the camera. Just a single smirk or furrow of his brow was enough to draw all eyes his way. But that brilliance, at times, cast shadows on those around him. She once admitted that, as a 1-year-old still finding her place, she sometimes felt like nothing more than the shadow standing next to a blazing star. In the big scenes, the spotlight inevitably tilted toward Leo. The reporters, the magazines, even fans gathered outside the set. Everyone seemed to mention him first. Of course, that's the nature of show business. Whoever shines brighter gets more attention. Yet for a young actress trying to breathe, the weight of being eclipsed could feel suffocating. What unsettled Kate wasn't Leo's success, but his lack of sensitivity at times. To the public, Leo was the fun-loving prankster who kept the set lively. But behind the jokes, there were moments when his timing stung. Once, during an emotionally intense scene, Kate was holding onto her character's feelings when Leo suddenly cracked a joke right in front of the camera. The crew burst out laughing. Kate lost her rhythm. No one blamed Leo. He was the soul of the set. But for her, it left a small scar, the feeling that her efforts could be brushed aside for a laugh. It never turned into an open fight. Kate never criticized him publicly. She still called him a dear friend and praised his genius when asked. But in private, she confided, "He makes me want to laugh and cry at the same time. Sometimes I feel like the little sister he can't stop teasing. And sometimes I feel dismissed, as if my seriousness doesn't matter as much as his jokes." Years later, in interviews, Kate would gracefully admit that this clash of personalities was part of Titanic's magic. She was the focused, disciplined one. He was carefree, playful, even rebellious. That tension made Jack and Rose feel both powerful and fragile. But behind the scenes, it also left her exhausted, constantly trying to balance herself against Leo's overwhelming energy. Kathy Bates, the powerful woman who made Kate Winslet both admire and fear her. What unsettled Kate most wasn't Kathy's strictness, but her effortless authority. She didn't need to shout or demand respect. People naturally deferred to her. That quiet power left an indelible mark on Kate. By 49, Kate could smile and admit, "What I hated most about Kathy Bates was that she was always right." A confession both bittersweet and affectionate. Because in truth, those uncomfortable moments had forged her into a stronger, more confident actress. Without Kathy's tough love, Kate may never have built the sharpness needed to survive in Hollywood's brutal arena. Audiences adore Kathy for her honesty and fearless spirit. For Kate, that same honesty was like fire, warming, but also searing. And when she names the people who made her the most uneasy, Kathy Bates appears not as an enemy, but as the greatest challenge she had to overcome on her journey to maturity. When people think of Titanic, many still remember Kathy Bates as Molly Brown, the warm-hearted, outspoken woman who dared to raise her voice amid tragedy. That image became a symbol of courage, and to audiences, Kathy seemed to blend seamlessly with her character. But for Kate Winslet, Kathy Bates was far more than a veteran co-star. She was a source of inspiration, and also an overwhelming pressure. From the very first day on set, 1-year-old Kate felt small in the presence of Kathy's commanding energy. She didn't have to try, just her steady walk, firm gaze, and booming voice were enough to silence a room. Crew members treated her with deep respect, tinged with caution. Kate was no exception. The unease Kate once spoke of wasn't about bitterness. It was the suffocating feeling of standing next to a woman so strong she left little space for anyone else. Kathy had a habit of speaking her mind. If a scene wasn't working, she'd say so, sometimes right as Kate was still trying to find her emotional footing. Once, as Kate struggled to connect with her character, Kathy bluntly told her, "Don't force it. Let it come naturally. You're too tense." For a young actress, those words felt less like guidance and more like judgment. The challenge was that Kathy was usually right. Her comments were sharp, accurate, born of experience. Looking back, Kate admits they were invaluable lessons. But in the moment, under the bright lights, in front of a massive crew, those remarks made her feel small, as if her voice carried no weight because Kathy had spoken first. One memory Kate never forgot was filming the first-class dining room scene. Every gesture had to be perfect, every movement precise. Nervous about using her silverware correctly, Kate hesitated. Kathy, already immersed in her role, suddenly laughed and said loudly, "Let me teach this girl some manners." The table erupted with laughter. For others, it was light-hearted fun. For Kate, it was a moment of deep embarrassment. Her inexperience laid bare for all to see. To the public, Kathy Bates was witty, bold, unfiltered. But for Kate, that blunt honesty sometimes felt like a blade. Not because Kathy was cruel, but because every word seemed to expose her insecurities. Standing next to such a towering figure, Kate constantly worried about being compared, about looking inexperienced, about not being enough. Years later, with the wisdom of age, Kate came to see Kathy as one of the people who truly shaped her resilience. But the cost of that growth was years of feeling cornered. Every critique from Kathy was both a gift and a wound, a mirror reflecting flaws Kate wasn't ready to face. At 20-something, that wasn't easy to bear. Billy Zane, the charming face that left a lasting scar on Kate Winslet's memory. At 49, Kate could finally admit, "I hated Billy Zane the most because he was too much like his character." Not a condemnation, not resentment, but an honest truth. For her, Billy's Cal wasn't just a villain on screen. He was a reminder of how deeply an actor's intensity can seep into real life, leaving traces long after the cameras stop. Audiences still admire Billy's charm, remembering Cal's sharp suits and suave demeanor. But for Kate Winslet, his memory will forever carry the sting of that slap, the threatening stare, and the silence that made her feel so small. That is why, when recalling the colleagues who unsettled her the most, she could never leave out Billy Zane. In Titanic, Billy Zane played Cal Hockley, Rose's wealthy, arrogant fiancé. Handsome, elegant, but also cruel and controlling. Audiences despised Cal, yet had to admit Billy's performance was so convincing that many forgot he was only acting. For Kate Winslet, that very transformation was what unsettled her, a feeling she carried long after filming ended. Billy Zane arrived on set with the air of a gentleman, polite, deep-voiced, always composed. But off-camera, something about him still gave Kate chills. The line between Cal and Billy seemed paper-thin. More than once, she quietly wondered, is this him acting, or is this who he really is? Unlike Leonardo DiCaprio's boyish energy or Kathy Bates' blunt strength, Billy carried a heavy, brooding presence. He was quiet, observant, and every word he spoke felt measured, layered with meaning. For young Kate, that silence was intimidating, like an invisible wall that kept her on edge. What disturbed her most was Billy's method of staying in character. Even when cameras stopped rolling, he often held onto Cal's menacing glare. During breaks, he would sometimes approach her with that same cold half-smile, as if Cal had never left. Billy saw it as a bit of professional playfulness. For Kate, it was deeply uncomfortable, blurring the line between performance and reality. One moment she never forgot was the infamous slapping scene. Director James Cameron wanted it real. Billy didn't hold back. The crack of his hand echoed across the set, leaving Kate's cheek burning red. The crew froze. Kate forced a smile afterward, but inside, she was shaken. She understood it was for the art, yet couldn't shake the feeling of being violated. That slap became a symbol of Billy's overwhelming presence, powerful, but frightening. After Titanic's release, Billy often spoke proudly of his role, saying he never shied away from the violence because it served the story. To Kate, that pride was bittersweet. It reminded her of the difficult moments she endured to make Cal so real. The irony was that Billy wasn't malicious. He was punctual, professional, respectful of the crew. But his extreme professionalism, coupled with his icy demeanor, created an atmosphere that felt suffocating. Kate once admitted to friends she always clung to the script when filming with him, as if it were a shield against his dominating energy. Years later, she acknowledged Billy's role was essential. Without Cal's menace, Jack and Rose's love story could never have shone so brightly. Yet alongside her admiration lived a scar. Memories of tense days, blurred lines, and emotional strain. Frances Fisher, the on-screen mother who left Kate Winslet with unforgettable silences. By 49, Kate could finally admit, Frances Fisher made me the most uneasy, because I always felt I was never good enough in her eyes. Not an accusation, but an honest confession. Frances, with her discipline and cold elegance, left Kate with a silence. The silence of a young woman always striving to prove herself. Audiences admired Frances for making Ruth so chilling and unforgettable. But for Kate Winslet, Frances Fisher was also a private memory. A stern, on-screen mother who pushed her into confronting her deepest insecurities. And that is why, when naming the colleagues who made her most uncomfortable, Kate included Frances, not to diminish her, but to acknowledge a truth. Sometimes, it is the harshest presences that shape an artist the most. In Titanic, Frances Fisher played Ruth DeWitt Bukater, Rose's aristocratic, demanding mother. With her cold stare, razor-sharp voice, and determination to marry her daughter off to Cal to preserve family honor, Ruth became one of the most despised figures in the film. But behind the camera, Frances Fisher also stirred up complicated feelings in Kate Winslet. Feelings that were far from easy. When Kate first stepped onto set in her early 20s, she was eager, full of innocence and ambition. Frances, more than 2 decades older, was already a seasoned actress, known for her tough, complex roles. Just walking into a room, Frances carried an authority that made everything go still. Kate once admitted that in their very first read-through she felt swallowed whole by that gaze. It wasn't hatred, but the heavy pressure of standing face to face with a force of nature. Frances's deep immersion into character could be unsettling. During mother-daughter scenes, she often held onto Ruth's icy expression even after the director called cut. Once, after a tense exchange, Kate tried to make small talk, but Frances only nodded curtly and walked away, as if to remind her, "Don't break the distance. We're still in character." That distance made their scenes electric, but for Kate, it also stung. One memory that never left her was the scene where Ruth grips Rose's hand, demanding obedience. On the page, it was a small gesture, but Frances squeezed Kate's hand so hard it hurt. No one on set reacted. They assumed it was part of the performance. Kate forced herself to carry on, but inside, she felt genuinely overpowered, just as Rose would have. The irony was that Frances didn't intend to be harsh. She rarely smiled, but when she did, it was warm. The problem was how rare those smiles were. Throughout filming, Kate often wondered, does she see me as an equal colleague or just a young girl who needs shaping? That question haunted her. The discomfort wasn't really about Frances's personality. It came from Kate's fear of not being enough. Every line, every look from Frances was so precise, so commanding, that Kate felt her own inexperience exposed. Frances's perfection became a mirror, reflecting every insecurity Kate tried to hide. Even during the promotional photo shoots, Frances stayed stern, almost still in character. Kate, shy in front of cameras, shrank beside her. The photos turned out striking, elegant, but chilling. To Kate, they preserved not just an image, but also the unease she felt in those moments. And yet, over time, Kate came to appreciate Frances in a different light. She was like a strict mother off-screen as well, distant, demanding, but every action carried a lesson. Without those tense rehearsals, without those intimidating stares, Kate might never have reached such emotional depth as Rose. And without being forced to face that fear, she might not have grown up so quickly as an actress. Bill Paxton, the quiet distance that left Kate Winslet unsettled. When Bill Paxton passed away, Kate wept. She confessed her deepest regret was never having a real conversation with him. All the words unsaid, all the questions left unasked. That unfinished silence became her lasting sorrow. At 49, looking back, she finally put it into words. Bill Paxton unsettled me the most, not because he did anything wrong, but because he never really did anything at all. He left a space I couldn't fill. Audiences loved Bill Paxton for his steadiness, his understated warmth. But for Kate Winslet, he was also the embodiment of a distance, wide enough to make her feel small, fragile enough to haunt her for years. And that is why, when naming the colleagues who left her most uneasy, she included Bill Paxton, not to diminish him, but to acknowledge a truth. Sometimes, it's not conflict that leaves the deepest mark, but silence. In Titanic, Bill Paxton didn't appear in Jack and Rose's love story. Instead, he played Brock Lovett, the modern-day treasure hunter searching for the heart of the ocean. Though not at the heart of the romance, he left audiences with an impression of calm steadiness. But for Kate Winslet, the name Bill Paxton carried a very different weight. Not conflict, not anger, but a quiet distance that left her with an unease she could never quite shake. Paxton was decades older, already a Hollywood veteran when he walked onto the set. He carried himself with the easy confidence of experience, yet with a reserved, almost guarded nature. Unlike Leonardo's energy, Kathy Bates's frankness, or Frances Fisher's intimidating discipline, Bill Paxton kept a gentle but deliberate distance. He was kind, courteous, but never beyond that, and it was that just enough that left Kate longing for more. In her early 20s, Kate yearned for mentorship, for encouragement from the older actors around her. She hoped for late-night talks, wisdom, reassurance. With Bill, the exchanges never went past polite greetings, a light joke, then silence. He was never unkind, never dismissive, but he never truly opened up. To Kate, his politeness felt like a glass wall, transparent, always there, but impossible to step through. She recalled a moment filming on the research vessel. The sea wind was bitter, and Kate shivered in her thin coat. Bill passed by, draped his heavy jacket over her shoulders, and smiled. It was a small act of kindness that touched everyone on set. But when she tried to start a conversation afterward, he only nodded and moved along. The gesture was beautiful, but the silence that followed left Kate with an ache, the feeling of being cared for, yet never truly connected. Paxton's presence didn't wound like Billy Zane's outbursts, nor overwhelm like Francis Fisher's intensity. His distance was quieter, subtler, like an itch that never goes away. Kate once admitted to friends, "He was like a good neighbor, always polite, but never inviting you inside." For a young actress desperate to learn, that silence was its own kind of loss. She admired Bill's steadiness, but couldn't get close enough to draw from it. Each time he entered the room, the atmosphere grew calm. So calm, it made words feel unnecessary. Instead of peace, Kate felt the restlessness of not knowing if she truly mattered to him at all. Years later, when Titanic became a phenomenon, Kate reflected on her castmates. With a mix of respect and regret, she said of Bill Paxton, "He was a gentleman, but also the person who made me feel most invisible, not as a complaint, but as an honest admission." The discomfort she felt around him didn't come from what he did, but from what he didn't do. Bill Paxton represented a space that was never bridged, a door never opened. Kate described it best. He was like a beautiful room with windows shut tight. You could see the light, but never feel the breeze. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story. Your support and companionship are truly the greatest motivation for us to keep bringing you more heartfelt behind-the-scenes stories. We look forward to seeing you again in the next videos.